Control Resonant isn't the sequel we expected for Remedy's surprise hit shooter Control, if you remember that one. This might be something completely different and maybe even better. We were actually invited to an early preview of Control Resonant, and based on what we've seen so far, the game does look promising. This was a hands-off preview. We didn't get to physically play the game, but we've come away with a lot more information about it. So I figured we'd talk about it. Here's what we know. This game is set in a paranatural New York City. It's folding the city into itself, and the sandbox environment is looking very complex here. So if you know the original game, the Hiss, the main threat, it escaped from the Federal Bureau of Control, so we're not limited to just the oldest house building. You'll literally walk up walls in this new kind of nightmare Manhattan. And you're fighting these monsters as Dylan Faden now instead of Jesse. He has a very different gameplay style. He has his own unique transforming weapon called the Aberrant, and like Jesse's service weapon, it can actually change forms depending on how you build your character. So think about how you would transform Jesse's gun. Now his melee weapon transforms. One of those forms is this giant oversized hammer. And despite the big heavy weapons, the game does seem all about speed. You're dashing into groups of enemies, you're bouncing from one monster to another while dealing some damage, stunning enemies with combos, and you'll set your foes up for a finishing move, which gives you a temporary boost. One buff increases your damage right after a finisher. This game is based entirely on aggression from what we've seen. And Remedy reiterated that this is an action RPG first. This isn't a Souls-like, even if the big boss fights might look to some people at a passing glance. This is more of like a Ninja Gaiden 4 or Devil May Cry 5. You're comboing enemies, you're air juggling, then defeating them with stylish combo enders. Swapping between standard attacks and skills is required to manage enemies in the field and bring them down efficiently. You're constantly running, moving, comboing, jumping, ground pounding, all that stuff. And we did see a lot of skills with the gameplay that we did see behind the scenes. So pressing down anytime on the D-pad sends you to a liminal space called the Gap. Now, this is like an instant teleportation. Pretty impressive technology. I think it's kind of like going to the Mind Place in Alan Wake 2, but instead of solving mysteries there, this is where you're going to customize your current build for maximum destruction. And while it doesn't seem like there's a ton of gear physically to juggle, there are various skill trees for weapons. You'll have skill trees for your primary form, your secondary transforming form, and combo enders. In addition to skills, we were also shown talents that give you new ways to play. So for example, one talent gives you the perfect dodge ability, I think. So that slows time when you hit a dodge just at the right time. You can refund and reset these skills or talents at any time, kind of like in Control. So while you won't be able to unlock literally everything in a single playthrough, they said, you'll still get a lot of wiggle room for customization. It sounds like a smart evolution of Control in terms of character progression and building. Instead of shooting things with various abilities, you'll be smacking them around. Remedy are developers that know how to put together a quality game, but we've never seen a melee-focused game from the company before. We don't know exactly how the combat feels, again, because we didn't get our hands on the controller. So that's still our big question mark. The feel is the most important aspect of one of these types of games. We're hoping Remedy nails it because they're nailing so much else that we've seen, but again, the jury's still out on that. Now, some of the abilities we were shown include like a big ground pound, a gliding ability, and summoning a shield of rocks and debris to surround Dylan. These are similar to Control, but some abilities are totally fresh. We saw a distance build that summons friendly allies called mold turrets that kind of blast at enemies, or a weapon that works kind of like a whip and hits enemies from much further away. It's got a bit more radius range to it. The developers did assure us that there's a lot they haven't shown yet in terms of builds. But one thing that they did tell us is that there is no parry feature in the game. In a world where parries are seemingly in every video game, it's almost nice to hear one thing we won't have to deal with. It's all about movement, positioning, and quality of your build. Still, we wouldn't be totally surprised if there was a parry sort of mechanic that did appear as one of those talents we talked about, but for now, that's where we're at. It's not a parry-focused game. Now, the setting is definitely what's important here. The first Control trapped us completely inside the oldest house. It was this incredibly designed, really cool, impossible structure that was always changing. In Control Resonant, we seem to be in semi-open world maps with lots of secrets and different paths to explore. This doesn't seem to be a fully open world game, but it does have different areas you'll be able to return to and like FBC forward operating bases to visit. And these bases are populated by FBC personnel, NPCs to walk around and talk to, including characters like Jessie Faden. Now, we didn't actually see Jessie in the gameplay, but we do know that she's an important part of the plot. Even if you're not going to play as her, she is around. But most of the time, it seems like you're going to be advised by this new character called Zoe, and you'll learn about their relationship and how Zoe's not really aware of the events of like what went on with Dylan in Control 1 as you kind of talk through this dialogue system. This dialogue system also allows you to talk while you're exploring. You're not like locked into a conversation menu. We assume there will be more characters just like that, sending us like, handcrafted quests and stuff. And while there are plenty of dialogue options to choose from, Remedy are giving us the heads up that there aren't going to be like major shifting choices to make. They want to tell their story. It's not a player choice driven story. Dialogue is for flavor and giving you more context, not for altering the story. This is all about Dylan's journey in this game, what the developers are calling the main story quests of the game. And quote unquote Dylan's journey is going to be mostly linear. But from what we've seen, this is more open zone than open world, with multiple large connected maps and side quests to complete. Now, one thing that I like to hear from Remedy here that they said they're going for the less is more approach, like the quality over quantity. They're going to give you a map that's going to have icons and things to do, but it's not going to be overwhelming busy work, according to their words. The devs wanted to make each goal feel unique with its own kind of lore and visual identity. That criticism was leveled at the original Control, that each floor had kind of a similar look to the rest. Remedy is aiming to change that with zones that, tell completely different stories. So far, the maps look like a mess of twisted buildings to us, but we're eager to see what the developers are holding back with these distinct different zones. Like I said, there are icons on the map and things to do, but it's going for all killer, no filler. There are going to be independent world stories to pursue outside your main objectives, smaller events unfolding in the zones, and apparently a whole lot of secrets. If it's anything like the original Control, there may be areas that you can't access until future powers are unlocked, or sections of Manhattan that are maybe way too difficult for Dylan to handle with a smaller, newer build. That's speculation. I don't know how that's going to go, but I could see that happening. Now, you're going to explore these new maps with a power that allows Dylan to literally walk up walls. You can grapple onto specific markers on the map or simply jump into a wall to latch onto it and walk up it, apparently. This looks like it could be completely disorienting, but the early maps that we've seen gameplay with don't get too topsy-turvy yet. You'll get bursts of exciting combat gameplay interspersed with exploration and some small environmental puzzle type things. It definitely looks like it can be overwhelming, especially with how the camera is pulled back and you can just see a lot going on, but it can be very interesting. Now, the enemies are definitely something else we need to discuss. The creatures here appear with the same red glow as the hiss from Control, but these creatures are far more mutated than anything we saw in that first game. There are plenty of twisted humanoid things here, but one of the most impressive enemies we saw was a patrolling giant flying whale beast thing that shoots arrays of red lasers. So Dylan needs to dodge and jump onto the back of this thing to deal damage. And that's just one example of how much more elaborate it seems like the enemies are going to be here. You're not just limited to humans with guns and telekinesis. The weirdest end of the enemies are definitely the Resonants here. These are like, apparently, I think the big bosses of each zone. These are like the apex predators that you need to hunt down and defeat. The Resonants we've seen are pretty bizarre, like a twisted dancer drenched in blood, or a massive statuesque face kind of buried in the ground. Our first glimpse at these creatures definitely gives big boss vibes, but the way you fight them is apparently going to be different. The developers say say that Control Resonant is an aggressive game, again, and not a reactant one. You're on the attack constantly, and you need to keep your momentum going to survive. There are some defensive abilities, like the rock shield we mentioned earlier, or that perfect dodge, but those are both returning combat features kind of from the first game in a way. This is all about aggressive action, and we presume the difficulty isn't going to be as brutally hard as a Souls-like, but we did see Dylan get smacked around quite a bit, so that is promising. Now, defeating Resonance gives you a nice reward. It seems like it's going to be worth it. If you defeat one, you get its power, and often you'll be able to choose from multiple powers, it seems. And it also seems that there are more weapons to unlock in Control Resonant through exploration. Altered items are the unique encounters that we crave, and they are back. The developers are being tight-lipped on like what kind of altered items we're actually going to see. They were the coolest things from Control 1, but I'm really hoping they can like build on like the respawning clocks and the killer refrigerator thing from the first. We have high hopes for even more oddball encounter stuff in Resonant, and some might even lead to optional boss fights. In addition to the hiss, we did see more of the mold growing in Manhattan, generating these weird, gross clouds of killer particles that will definitely probably make Dylan's life a lot more difficult. We're guessing there won't be status effects like an Elden Ring Scarlet Rot or anything, but the mold does make us think that there's a high probability of some sort of poison swamp going on here. Now, customizing your experience was a big part of Control Resonant with what we saw, like I said, and you're going to be able to tweak Dylan in a number of ways, and some more consequential than others. First of all, you can use that gap, that place that you can enter anytime, to reconfigure your loadout. You can swap talents to focus on fast melee, ranged, or even turning enemies to fight on your side. The Aberrant has primary and secondary forms you can use and unlock to change up your playstyle, either using the heavy hammer attacks, those long-range whip attacks, or double blades for faster combos up close and personal. At those FBC bases, you can customize Dylan's look too. You can change his outfit, you can give him different hairstyles, or facial hair, or slap on a pair of glasses. We were surprised to see how in-depth this was. The original Control lets you play some dress up with Jesse, but there's a lot more going on here. It does help that Dylan is kind of like a bald Cypher type of dude, so he's got a whole palette you'll be able to play around with. Whether you actually want to do that is totally optional and up to you, but I like the options. Now, let's wrap up on the technical side of things. Remedy revealed that they're tweaking the Northlight engine for bigger environments, longer draw distances, and more enemies on screen. They're aiming for 60 FPS on all platforms. That's what they're targeting. That is very important for action-heavy games like this. Curiously, the developers did reveal that enemies do respawn similar to like a Jedi Survivor or Dark Souls or crucially, like the first Control, but that there's more to the story that they can't reveal yet. Another thing that they're not revealing is a solid release date. The developers have said that Control Resonant is expected to drop in 2026, which is very good news, but we don't know exactly when. Grand Theft Auto 6 is the nuclear bomb waiting to drop in November, so we're guessing that Control Resonant, even if it's a different audience, would probably want to aim for not November, maybe late summer, I don't know. It's up to them whenever they choose to drop it. Hopefully they take the time to make it really good. We're excited to see more, especially after this preview. Control is an incredibly creative, vibrant original series from one of the best developers, one of the more creative developers in the biz. And Control Resonant isn't resting on its laurels with a standard sequel. Everything here is totally different, while thankfully still feeling distinctly Control. Now, whether or not all those changes pan out, we'll find out when the game releases. But for now, that was a preview and some information, some things you need to know. So let us know in the comments what you think of Control Resonant. Any opinions? Did you like the first game? Do you like that they're changing things up? Or do you miss Jesse? Let's talk anything Control Resonant down in the comments. If you like this video, learn some new stuff, clicking the like button helps us out. We would appreciate that. And if you're new, consider subscribing because we put out videos every single freaking day. But hey, as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.